Well, as usual, ideas come to me, especially in the middle of the night. And one evening I was thinking, what would happen if I took my Gutta bottle and took it one step further? In other words, what would happen if I drew with the Gutta bottle? This is the number 05, remember now. It's a relatively small line that we're producing here. And it actually dries very fast. So I'm going to show you a little trick here. So what I'm doing is I'm creating some of these nice darks that you see that are forming almost like a stripe in this cat. And I thought, what would happen if I took and sprayed into this while it was wet? It was so cool. So I'm just going to take it a little bit further. You can't go too far with this because the paint dries so quickly. So for example, I couldn't do this whole thing and then decide to spray into it. That would be a serious problem. But I can do just a few of these, little section. And I'm getting close to, I gotta quit pretty soon, but it's always so much fun to do the drawing. It's hard for me to stop. But I think I'm getting close. Okay, just maybe add a few more little gray-like shapes here. Now I'm going to take my fine mister. Remember, it has to have a very narrow inner so that it's going to give me a fine mist. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to point and shoot. That would create a wet area in a circle. I'm going to spray this with my hand moving. And what happens is you spray it once and it looks like nothing's happening. So what you have to do is spray it and then just wait. That's good. So I've sprayed twice here. You can see it's starting to move. Over here now I could maybe do a second spray and a little bit over here. Generally what happens is people spray too much. You can see I've sprayed a little too much here. So just taking a piece of tissue, I can lift some of that away, but the rest of it I like. I'm just going to leave it. In fact, I'd like just a little bit more spray down here. And another thing I found is that you can then draw into the spray. Look how cool that is. So first of all, you just do maybe 1 or 2 sprays. That's all. And then you can draw into this wet area and it'll give you some nice grays. So let's do it again. Here we have another nice dark coming in around the eye here. And I try to think about the gesture of the eye so that I'm getting an interesting variety of lines. Sometimes they're nothing more than little dots, little shapes. Always thinking about the directional movement. Now I'm going to spray into this. Remember, think about where I want this to go. So I'm just going to give it a little psst. That was once. I'm going to do it here too. That was once. That's enough actually. And it's hard to see, but those little dots, it takes a while for this viscous, actually quite thick acrylic paint to move from one little dot to the next. So sometimes you think nothing's happening, but it really is. So I'm just going to wait. You have to be patient. Now after the first black acrylic dries, then what I like to do is take my number 7mm, which is, remember now, just a little bit thicker, and I like to come in and draw in some of the whiskers. Oh man, this is way too much fun. And then you'll notice he's got a lot of whiskers in his ears. And even around the eyes, there's little white whiskers coming over the top of the eye. There's little dots in the eye. Some of the eye is outlined. So wherever I see some whites, I can come in and add them. I can put them on top of the black if it filled in too much, which it did here on this particular one. So I can come in, and if it filled in too much, I can just add a few whites. This is a nice way to cheat. I love to cheat. Whatever I can do to make it a better painting, I think it's okay. So that's my next step, is to take the number 7 Gutta and put in the whiskers and some of the highlights in the eyes. And then when that dries, now I'm ready to paint the colors over the top of the acrylics. And generally speaking, I just did a real simple finished painting where you can see I layered quite a few warm colors, everything from pink to gold, some purples, and some soft blues. Up here I went into a little cobalt and made it a little bit darker. But you'll notice all the painting I did was quite soft. I felt the drawing carried its own weight, and so I kept the colors real soft and simple. Now I even decided to take it a step further. And I got this idea from a student, so I can't really take credit for it. But I noticed that when she was doing some black lines, and her paintings were very humorous, just delightful, her black wasn't totally black. It was kind of reddish black and greenish black and reddish black and greenish black. So she told me a little secret. What she did is when she would fill her bottle, she would alternate. We know that red and green make black. So she'd do a little squeeze of red, and then she'd do a little squeeze of green, red, green, without ever mixing it up. So that as she let the color flow out of the Gutta bottle, she was actually getting little traces of red and green. So I took that step just a little bit further, and this cat had this terracotta colored hair. So I did a combination of the terracotta, the black, the terracotta, the black, and alternated the acrylic in the Gutta bottle, and then just let it come out, and whatever came out, I had to like. So if you look carefully, a lot of the terracotta came out and bled into those nice warm colors, and then when the black bled out, it just stayed in the black range. And now you can see a finished example of this particular cat. Again, we've got the white that we drew over the black into the eyes. Everything was wet so that the colors are very soft and wet into wet. Another exciting interpretation was this lion. I had way too much fun drawing it. You can see some of the lovely soft areas that I got as I sprayed into it with the fine mister. So then when it came time to put the colors over, did some stamping into that iconic edge and just simply left the background light and let the gray tones and the blacks pretty much carry the painting. Just did this whole thing wet into wet, and that was it. I didn't come in and paint more. I left it in this alla prima wet into wet style. Here's another example of spraying into the wet acrylic paint to form some of the grays. You can see when I did this underdrawing for the birch trees, I just gave it a little psst, psst in a couple areas, and it actually formed some of the grays on the birch tree.